Hello, greetings mga ka-spacers natin out there from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. And sa lahat ng ating mga ka-spacers na nakatutok ngayon worldwide and netwide. Magandang araw po sa inyong lahat. This is your ka-spacer and space commander, Prof Jun Cajigal, welcoming you to another online telescope viewing. And my telescope mga ka-spacers is pointing at our sun with sunspots. Today is April 25, 2022 and as you could see on screen, marami po tayong sunspots na naobserbahan po ngayon. So join me in the next 20 minutes as we study and observe the sun through the lenses of my telescope. And ito po yung telescope na ginamit ko for our solar imaging today. So this is a Vixen Custom 80mm refracting telescope. And kung mapapansin niyo po sa harapan ng telescope ay may solar filter that will allow me to observe the sun safely na hindi po masisira yung mga mata ko. So warning po mga ka-spacers, do not observe the sun directly. Or else po masisira po ang mga mata ninyo. So always observe the sun na may protection, like in my case po yung telescope ko ay may Baader solar filter that will allow me to observe the sun safely po. So again po mga ka-spacers out there, never observe the sun directly. Alright? So kung makikita nyo sa ating solar imaging today, marami po tayong sunspots na naobserbahan. And these sunspots mga ka-spacers, these are areas on the sun that are relatively cooler and they appear darker than its surroundings. So ito nakikita po natin na parang bilog na bola, that's the photosphere. That's the visible surface of the sun. And these sunspots are relatively cooler than the surrounding photosphere. These patches are roughly the size of our planet Earth or even larger, about 20 to 40 times larger than our planet. So malalaki po yung mga sunspots na nakikita po natin ngayon on screen. And again mga ka-spacers, we are entering the so-called solar maximum or solar max. So this is the phase of the sun na talagang marami po tayong sunspots na makikita. So pag marami pong sunspots na makikita, expect increase in solar activity such as frequent solar flares, and marami po sa ating mga kasama ngayon sa astronomy community na naobserbahan na nila may mga solar flares nga. And so sa mga darating na panahon pa, makikita po natin that there will be an increase in the number of sunspots. Alright po, and in a few minutes we will be magnifying the image of our sun so para makita po natin yung mga sunspots na yan in greater detail. Alright, and these sunspots, they appear dark because they are cooler than the surrounding photosphere. Alright, so bakit kaya ganun? Why is it that sunspots are relatively cool? Now, it is because they form at areas where magnetic fields are particularly strong. These magnetic fields are so strong that they keep some of the heat within the sun from reaching the surface. Alright, and itong photosphere po na to medyo mainit pa ho yan. Mainit yung ating photosphere. Alright. So the photosphere mga ka-spacers has a temperature of about 5,800 degrees Kelvin. Mainit po yan. Now these sunspots are cooler, siguro mga 3,800 degrees. Alright, they look dark only in comparison with the brighter and hotter regions of the photosphere around them. Alright, so ayan po yung mga sunspots na nakikita po natin ngayon. Alright, so kung kayo namamangha, kung kayo po ay na-amaze sa nakikita ngayon on screen, feel free to type in your comments or your reactions in our comment section below. And ang importanteng batas mga ka-spacers, please like and share itong ating online na telescope viewing so that we could reach more people. Maikalat po yung ating online telescope viewing lalong-lalo na po sa mga estudyante po para ma-inspire naman sila to be engaged in the sciences. Alright, so ito na po yung ating magnified image of our sun. Yan po. So yan yung malalaking sunspots na yan, and kagaya ng sinabi ko kanina mga ka-spacers, those sunspots are even larger than our planet. Ayan po, no? So kitang-kita po yung darker central region called the umbra. Ayan po yung umbra, yung central darker region, and may lighter outer section called the penumbra. So ayan po yung itsura ng mga sunspots ngayon, April 25, 2022. And we expect more of these sunspots in the coming days and weeks to come kasi we are now entering the so-called solar max. Alright, so ayan po, no, yung darker central region called the umbra and the lighter outer section called the penumbra. Ayan po yung mga sunspots ngayon, no? So talagang nakakamangha talaga mga ka-spacers. Alright, so ayan po ang mga sunspots ngayon. So yun yung darker central region called the umbra and the lighter outer section called the penumbra. Ayan po, so ginagalaw po ulit natin yung telescope para mas makita nyo po at kayo'y ma-fascinate sa mga sunspots na to. Alright, so nung mga nakaraang taon hindi naman po ganyan yung ating araw, so wala tayong naobserbahan noon na mga sunspots. Pero ngayon po talagang sa mga nakaraang linggo, no? If you will go back, ipanoorin niyo po yung mga replay po ng aking online telescope viewing of the sun. Talagang parami ng parami po ang mga sunspots na naobserbahan natin lately. Alright, so ayan po ulit, no? Yung mga sunspots na yan in greater detail. So yung darker central region called the umbra and you have the lighter outer section called the penumbra. Alright, and itong mga sunspots na to, they form over periods lasting from days to weeks, and they can persist even weeks or months, okay, before dissipating. So medyo magtatagal pa ho yan, no? And if you will compare my previous online telescope viewing of the sun, medyo gumagala, nag-iiba yung position ng mga sunspots na yan because the sun is also rotating on its axis. Alright, the average number of spots visible on the face of the sun is not constant. Yan, so we will expect more of this in the coming days and weeks to come kasi nga we are entering the so-called solar max. Alright, so historical records of sunspots counts, we can go back hundreds of years. Yan. But actually si Galileo pong unang naka-observe ng sunspots. Alright, etong sunspot cycle na to has an average period of roughly 11 years. So again, we are entering the so-called solar maximum. Now, naobserbahan natin na maraming sunspots na po-form. Alright, and ito pong maliit na sunspot na to, medyo ano yan, nandun sa kabilang side ng ating solar image. Ayan. Alright, so ayan, and bumabalik tayo dun sa bandang portion na yun ng sun na maraming grupo ng mga malalaking sunspots. Ayan po, alright. Okay, so that's our magnified image of our sun with sunspots. Today is April 25, 2022. And I got this image of our sun, no? Hapon, mga 1:30 ng hapon of April 25, 2022. Alright. So again, these sunspots, mga ka-spacers, so these are magnetic storms. Alright, these sunspots are caused by disturbances in the sun's magnetic field welling up in the photosphere. So that's the visible surface of the sun. The powerful magnetic fields in the vicinity of sunspots produce active regions on the sun. which in turn frequently spawn disturbances such as solar flares and coronal mass ejections. So ano tong mga coronal mass ejections na ito or CMEs? Now, coronal mass ejections or CMEs, they are powerful eruptions near the surface of the sun driven by kinks in the solar magnetic field. The resulting shocks ripple through the solar system and can interrupt satellite communication and power grids on Earth. So nakaka-apekto po yung mga solar coronal mass ejections sa mundo natin and even solar flares. Alright, because sunspots are associated with solar activities, space weather forecasters track these features in order to help predict outbursts of solar storms. Alright, so again po, nakaka-apekto po itong mga sunspots na to sa mundo natin. Alright, and if sunspots are active and dumadami po yung number ng sunspots, more solar flares will result, increasing the activity of the sun and creating an increase in geomagnetic storm activity for Earth. Ayan po yung epekto niyan. Therefore, during sunspot maximum, ito po yung we are now entering the solar max, the Earth will see an increase in the northern and southern lights, yung mga auroras, and possible disruption of radio transmission and power grids. So yun yung mga epekto po ng sunspot sa mundo natin. Pero wag po kayong mabahala, hindi naman po yan cause for our concern. Alright? So talagang spectacular lang pag nakita natin yung mga dumadaming sunspots sa visible surface ng sun. Alright, so ayan po and bago po natin i-magnify ulit yung image ng ating araw, again shout out po sa mga officers and crew of the Vedan Society of Young Astronomers headed by Miss Angeline Kilang. And shout out din sa mga volunteers ko from the Skywatchers Society of Las Piñas, sila Miss Andre Caparos and si Miss Angelica Gregorio. Yan, pagpatuloy niyo ang inyong magandang ginagawa in promoting astronomy to the general public. Alright po, and shout out din po sa mga ka-spacers natin out there na nakatutok po ngayon sa ating online telescope viewing. And again po mga ka-spacers, ito yung importanteng batas na kailangan yung gawin to please like and share itong ating online telescope viewing para naman po makarating sa maraming tao, lalong-lalo na po yung mga estudyante para ma-inspire naman sila to be engaged in the sciences, lalong-lalo na po ang astronomy. Alright, and we are still celebrating Global Astronomy Month. We are now on day 25 of Global Astronomy Month. And halos patapos na rin po tayo sa ating celebration ng Global Astronomy Month. Alright, so dun sa mga nakamiss ng ating magnified image of the sun, eto po ulit. And ayan po yung mga sunspots in greater detail. Ayan po. So nakikita niyo po yung mga darker central region called the umbra. Ayan po. And the lighter outer section called the penumbra. Okay. So ayan po nakakamangha talaga. And again, these sunspots are magnetic storms. Ayan they are caused by disturbances in the sun's magnetic field welling up to the photosphere. Yung photosphere po, ayan po yung visible surface of the sun. Yung nakikita po natin na white background, ayan po. The powerful magnetic fields in the vicinity of the sunspots produce active regions which in turn frequently spawn disturbances like solar flares and even coronal mass ejections or CMEs. Ano ba tong mga coronal mass ejections na to? Same with the solar flares. Now, coronal mass ejections or CMEs, they are powerful eruptions near the sun's surface, driven by kinks in the solar magnetic field. Parang volcanic eruption po, no? Powerful eruptions near the surface of the sun, driven by kinks in the solar magnetic field. The resulting shock rippled through the solar system, and itong mga ejections neto, which are electrically charged particles, can interrupt satellite communication and power grid. Kasi nakakaapekto yan sa ionosphere po. That's the layer of the atmosphere natin na may electrically charged particles or ions. Alright. So, because these sunspots are associated with solar activity, ating mga amateur astronomers and space weather forecasters, they track these sunspots in order to help predict outbursts of solar storms. And nakakaapekto yung sunspots po sa mundo natin. So, if sunspots are active, no, pag parami yung mga sunspots na nakikita po natin, we expect more solar activity like solar flares and coronal mass ejections, which result creating an increase in geomagnetic storm activity for Earth. So during sunspot maximum, yung solar max na papunta na rin po tayo dyan, the Earth will see an increase in the northern and southern lights, yung mga auroras, and possible disruptions in radio transmission, power grids, radar transmissions, mga ganyan. Kasi yung mga coronal mass ejections na yan and solar flares, they affect the ionosphere of the Earth. Yung ionosphere is a layer of the atmosphere na nasa thermosphere that is made up of electrically charged particles or ions. Alright, so ayan po yung effect ng sunspot sa mundo natin. Okay, so ayan po yung pinapakita po natin ngayon, yung parang maliit na sunspot na yan nandun sa bandang edge ng ating solar image. Pero hindi maliit yan, malaki po yan. Mas malaki pa ho yan sa mundo natin. Alright, so ayan po yung mga sunspots na nakikita po natin ngayon, April 25, 2022. So that's our magnified image of the sun today. And sana po nagustuhan po ninyo yung ating observation ngayon ng araw. At maswerte po tayo at hindi maulap. Ayan, kasi may mga araw kasi na na maulap tapos sisikat yung araw tapos uulap ulit. Uncertain talaga po. At napakaswerte po natin ngayong April 25 at walang kaulap-ulap yung sky at mainit. Alright, mainit. Talagang ramdam talaga natin yung April summer. Okay, so ayan po. So sana nagustuhan nyo po yan. And salamat po. Thank you sa mga nakatutok po ngayon sa ating online telescope viewing of our sun. And again, pakiusap ko po mga ka-spacers. Ibigay nyo na po sa akin. Ako'y nakikiusap sa inyo to please like and share itong ating online telescope viewing para po makarating sa maraming tao, lalong-lalo na po yung mga estudyante natin. Please like and share ang mga posts po namin sa Vedan Society of Young Astronomers and also sa Sky Watcher Society of Las Piñas. Ikalat po natin, no, para ma-engage naman po yung mga kabataan sa siyensya. Alright? Okay po. So I guess hanggang dito na lang po muna tayo sa ating online telescope viewing. Magta 20 minutes na po. So maraming salamat po. And again, shoutout po sa lahat ng mga ka-spacers po natin ngayon. Okay, at hindi kayo nagsasawa na manood sa aking online telescope viewing. And ini-invite po namin kayo po sa aming webinar this coming Wednesday, April 27. Okay po, meron po kaming webinar about the Artemis project. No, man's going back to the moon with our guest speaker, si Mr. Rodion Herrera. Ayan po. And libre po itong webinar. Walang bayad. All you need to do is to register. Visit our Facebook page, the Tibetan Society of Young Astronomers, and click on the registration link para mabigay namin yung Zoom link sa inyo so that you can attend the webinar. And may certificate of participation po ito. Alright, libre po ito, walang bayad yung webinar. And also on April 30, antabayanan po ninyo yung aming 4th episode of Cosmo Quest, yung aming podcast with our special guest, a medical frontliner and an amateur astronomer, si Dr. Armando Lee. Ayan po. So ayan po yung aming remaining activities in our celebration of Global Astronomy Month 2022. Ayan na po. So marami pong salamat and sana po nag-enjoy po kayo sa ating online telescope viewing of the sun with Sunspots. This is your Spacer and Space Commander, Professor Jun Cajigal, saying live long and prosper. Maraming salamat po. And always look up, keep reaching for the stars. And ito ngayon yung ating araw. Alright, marami pong salamat. See you on our next online telescope viewing. Bye-bye! Please like and share. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, The Science Guy, Professor Jun Cajigal. Subscribe po. Click on that subscribe button and yung notification bell para ma-update po kayo sa aming mga future videos. Bye-bye!